The only way black men can aid in the healing of black women is by healing themselves first. No man who's injured can take his time to help anybody else. There is so much that black men haven't healed within themselves, so it makes it damn near even impossible to even see the type of healing you need and or to assist in your own aid. Self-development is the basis of community development.
Hello and welcome. You are now tuned into the Ebb and Flow podcast. I'm your host, LA-based actor, model, and poet, Ebony Davis. From healing the feminine body to caring for the masculine body, our collective liberation depends on one another to come together and assist each other. Now, today we are blessed to talk with someone who has done the work of tackling their own healing and now wants to assist men to do the same work of unlocking their highest potential. Welcome, founder, financial educator, and global thought leader, 19 Keys.
Man, I'm happy to be here.
Yes, we're so happy to have you. It's such a pleasure. You know, the Ebb and Flow podcast is really all about healing. It's all about our collective liberation. And so it seems like it's completely in alignment with everything that you stand for. So having you here today to share your insights truly means a lot to us.
Thank you. Yeah, I love your platform, your voice, the way you project your messages, you know what I mean, your poeticism. So it's aligned with my brand, most definitely.
Can you talk about what sparked your healing journey?
The necessity. Growing up in Oakland, California, and St. Louis, you know, you grow up in trauma-filled environments. You go through a lot of trauma, but you don't know it's trauma, right? Mm-hmm. And that trauma can be the way that you raised, which makes you, you know, become a product of your environment. And then once you outside that environment, then you can see how much your actions in different environments hurt people. Because I think it's normal inside. If you're in the hood, you do things as normal. You take some of those same actions and now you're in a different environment and you're around people who didn't grow up in that, then your actions can be detrimental to them, and then it allows you to start to see yourself. I like to say that I'm blessed just in the sense that I want to have self-accountability. I want to deal with my shadow self. Like, you know, revealing is healing, right? So, but that revelation has to come to self. You don't always have to be to the world, right? Like the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that you are who you are when you're alone. You know what I'm saying? By yourself. So I take that to heart when I'm by myself and I'm proud of myself. You dig? And if I'm not, and then that means that there was aspects of myself that I need to work on and change. Yeah. And I don't believe I have to be perfect, but I got to be working. You know what I'm saying? So it really is. I've been through so much life that, you know, it wasn't one point in time that I felt like, yo, I need to get better at this, that, and the third. I think it was just iterations of different experiences that led me to a journey of self-development and betterment.
I feel like for me, there was definitely a moment of rock bottom. And that rock bottom moment has occurred actually several times, you know, because you think you've healed, you think you've ascended to a certain level, and then you have another moment of like, wow, I'm devastated behind this unhealed aspect of myself, this shadow aspect of myself. So you don't feel like there was one moment that really just sparked your journey and got you started, even if there were other iterations to follow.
Going through my last court case, you know, what that really sparked was more so about not becoming a product and a statistic, right? Because when you go through an actual court case, you're sitting there through the whole entire time, but it's uncertainty. So you don't know what your future gonna be. Like, I couldn't control the outcome of it. I can only work, strategize, and then try to get a better outcome. Yeah. But that was completely in the hands of somebody else. And I never wanted my future, or I never want again for my future to be in the hands of anybody else's decision. So I believe that just taking on that self-accountability of what got me in that situation, whether I'm guilty or not guilty, I believe that it's about, you know, always taking ownership over everything that you do. You feel me? So I always point to that point in time because I think that was one of the bigger parts of my life that really steered me into a direction for betterment.
How do you feel that bettering yourself and healing yourself can help dismantle those systems such as mass incarceration, the prison industrial complex, and help to liberate us as a collective?
Well, they feed off, you know, the fact that we aren't healed. They feed off the fact that our minds are at dis-ease, right? Mental health issues, the recidivism rate and the crime statistics feed off of toxic, unhealthy environments. You take a man that is in a two-parent household. He grew up with a father that teaches and that he can watch, that he can aspire to become like, to where he can filter his decision-making based on the values and principles that he learned. He has a loving mother that teaches and nurtures and fosters that energy within him that he learns from. now you starting off with balance. You starting off on an even till.
Yeah.
So now you have the ability to filter what goes on around you in your environment, right? But if you take out parents within that household, there's going to be an imbalance automatically because he comes from two people, but he's missing the balance of one of those. So there's a part of an aspect of self that you don't get to learn about, right? So then you got the influence of the environment because you start to seek out whatever you're missing in your environment, right? Whether that's the influence of peers, gang culture, right? And then that also limits, financial stability in a household. So therefore, criminality starts to become on the table because now you need to eat, or you're looking at what's in your environment and you're in a low-income environment. So you start to have these adverse childhood experiences, right? And these increase, right, the susceptibility towards you going to jail, you having disease, early death, suicide, mental health issues. And those are the exact things that the pipeline to prison feed off of, from the classroom to the prison cell. I mean, everything from comprehension rates and reading rates, right? They utilize that to tell, how many children will end up in prison later on, right? So once you heal yourself and you heal the mind, it really goes into self-knowledge. I believe the basis of healing starts with knowledge of self. Yeah. Right? Or knowledge of selves, if one wants to call it. But you have to know who you are in order to know where you're going, to know where you came from. Yeah. All of those things reverberate into the mind that allows you to say, okay, I've gotten over, my mistreatment of self. Now I can get over my mistreatment of others.
It's my belief that our psychological constructs are projected out into the world. And so we've constructed our identities around limitation. And so that is the reason why we see mass incarceration at such a high level, because that is the physical projection of what is going on internally and psychologically. Does that also ring true for you and your experience?
For me, limited thinking goes into the idea of imagination, right? And I think imagination is one of the most important tools that we can use. If you can't see beyond your reality, you can't produce anything else.
Right.
You understand me? So that limited thinking comes from that realistic thinking. You start to become on that bottom table of that Maslow's pyramid where you're only thinking survival. You're only thinking for next week. Right. So everything in your reality becomes limited, right? Because you no longer are the master of destiny and time. A child that is fostered with the proper imagination and thinking and vision can always think of themselves in a better environment, can always see themselves somewhere better. So without you being able to project a better image of yourself, you are unequipped with the tools to produce that reality, right? So for me, in the hoods of America, right, and throughout the world, the poorest people, right, at some point in time are taught that realistic thinking is the way to go. Yeah. You understand me? They're taught not to dream, not to think bigger, right? Instead of, saying what as a child, whatever you want to be, you start to give these boxes. Then those boxes start to tear away. Well, you can't be a doctor. You understand me? You can't be a lawyer. Now you could just be somebody that works at a shop or an assistant or whatever it may be. But you start to become indoctrinated into limited thinking. And that comes from school, that comes from the household, that comes from peers, society, and then we go to entertainment, and then you don't see yourself anywhere, right, of any higher substance. Like, for myself, there's no representation of somebody like myself in mainstream media at all, right? There's just none. People that think like me and or look like me, per se, right, with my background. There's no young black Muslim men who are masculine and aware of self, and that perspective is projected. So I got to produce that for myself. That has to be in my own imagination to where I can see myself in spaces around the world, right? Otherwise, if you don't see it, you don't believe it. You dig? Like, that just goes towards the neuroscience of the mind. But they understand that, which is why they don't project any representation of us in these strongs. Basically, they are anybody that can control things. Because when we say colonizers, I'm talking about anybody that works with them, you understand me, that is aware of what they're doing. Yeah. Right? And so whether it's the media companies, whether it's the government, whether whoever are in positions of power and they don't do something better with their position of power, then they are on the side of those keeping people down. Anytime I see a movie, anytime I see anything, I don't just look at what's given to me. I want to know who's the writer. You understand me? Because they are the people that actually produced it. It comes from their mind. So a lot of people be like, it ain't no agenda. How do you know? You never sat down with the writer.
Right.
You never sat down with the organization leader or the president of this association.
Yeah.
There's an agenda to every single thing that's done in the world. And most of those agendas are against the growth and the progression of the black man and woman.
Yeah. I would absolutely agree with that. And even if it's not against the growth and progression of the black men and women, it's for profit. It's for the profit of this colonizing group. You can look at the entertainment industry and see that as a woman, in order to be an entertainer, there's a certain level of body you have to give. There's a certain level of sexuality you have to give. And that sexuality is marketed. That sexuality is, put on display because it's profitable. Yeah. And, to me, that is no different than 400 years ago when our sacred vessel was put on display and assigned a value. And I think the energetics of that we still haven't transcended because we are still allowing ourselves to be exploited and marketed to in this way. And we don't even realize it because it's happening at such a subtle level.
Right.
And so I think that definitely ties into what you're saying. Something else that you've said is that a man can't be a man until he has a vision. Explain what that means and what your vision has been and how it's helped to empower you.
A man's superpower is in his mind. And so you can tell the quality of a man by what's in his mind because he's only going to produce what's inside him, right? So what he sees for his life is what he produces and what he projects, right? So if a man gets with a woman per se, right, a woman is going to be a helper of that vision, right? It's the same way I look at it as a business because relationship is a business, right? You have two partners coming together to create something of substance, right? Okay. Regardless of that's a nonprofit business or a for-profit business, right? Or for love business or a not for love business. So any activities you do in life that keep you busy is your business. You dig? So for a man, if he doesn't have a vision for his business, that's like not having a business plan. You just transacting throughout life, but you don't have a vision for where things are going. So you can't even grade whether you're successful or not. You understand me? Because you live life in just a randomized order.
Right.
Right? So a man having a vision is basically his way of impregnating himself with ideas and then having a purpose of something to do. So a vision gives you purpose. It gives you direction for every single conversation you have, the things you read, the people you talk to. Now you're dealing with a man's vision. He's trying to go into a certain direction. So anything that helps him in that direction is aiding him in his life, his purpose, his mission, his will, his vision.
Yeah.
But a man with no vision is blind. You understand me? Now he needs to wait till he has a vision. Then he has necessity for, let's say, a partner. You understand me? But until then, you're a boy because a boy don't have a vision for life. A boy is being managed by his parents, being managed and told what to do, what not to do throughout life. And then at some point in time, you learn how to manage those things for yourself. You understand me? And in management, you learn how to manage your business. So now I know how to manage my affairs and my activities on a daily basis that can keep me successful. And then when you marry that skill set with a vision, now I know exactly what I need to do in order to get where I want and who I want to become, right? It's a much different substance of meeting a man without a vision and a purpose and meeting one with one because he can't be distracted by things that have nothing to do with his vision.
So how does a man cultivate that vision? How do I go from being a boy without a vision to a man with a vision? What does that bridge look like? I
always talk about the 3 E's: education, experience, and exposure. Okay. Understand me? Now, your education is what you put into your mind, right? Your experience are the things that you go through. Your experience help you shape what's put into your mind. And your exposure sets the parameters how large your mind is, right? Because the more you expose, the greater your mind becomes, right? And the more vast it becomes, and it doesn't contract after that. Once a man has education, he now has the ability to think, right? To learn, more so than anything. Thinking and learning is something that most people don't do, right? And most people don't know how to think, and most people don't know how to learn. Right, so once a man learns how to think and learn, now he can have experiences. So when he go through those experiences, he can filter it based on his education. Then he starts to learn himself throughout different situations. What is he good at? What is he not good at? Yeah. Right? What do I like to do? Right? Those things that a man starts to find out about himself, where he finds what he's good at, start to give you confidence and it gives you happiness. Now you start to draw a vision because you're like, okay, I like to speak. right? So therefore, maybe I could become a speaker. You start to envision things larger based on your skill sets and your gifts.
Yeah.
You understand me? And then you start to equate that to purpose. Because what something does is its purpose. I always use the analogy of a remote. A remote is to control the TV. That's the purpose of a remote. So once you find out your gifts, now you know what you do. You know what you're good at. So now you can equate that to what your purpose is in life. So you have to go through those iteration and experiences. In Native American culture, sometimes is a boy going through the woods and you have to fend for itself for a few days.
Yeah.
Right? Those rites of passage.
Yeah.
In America, we don't have real rites of passages that are healthy that say you have went from being a boy to a man. Because once you do that, you're going to feel a certain way about yourself, a certain confidence, right? And then that's automatically to start giving images of who you are, right? And those images start to paint the picture of your vision.
I saw a conversation you had with Shaka Bars, and I commented on it because it was really intriguing to me. And it was on the topic of women being predators and preying on young boys and just what that can do to their development, and is there enough awareness around it? And I would just love to hear what you have to say about that topic.
No, I think that's one of those double standards in society that we just accept, and I think that that's something that just about all people kind of accept, which is why there's no conversation or activism around the topic. And a lot of people say, well, the young boy is not affected in the same way, in a way that he internalizes that information from that experience as a young girl. But it also goes just towards the predatory nature of an older woman that wants to do that, period. Right? Because a lot of times these are women that go on to have their own children, right? And it just goes on to the larger behavior of society and what we accept in women, what we accept in men, right? But specifically for that young boy, it can rob him of the innocence, right?
Yes.
And the purity and how he even goes about relationships and seeing women and how he values sexual experiences, right? Because you now robbed of that opportunity to see it in an organic or natural way. So then that later on says something about his relationships and the habits that he formed around his sexual experiences. And so with that being the norm, nobody ever says, well, maybe this is the reason why that he becomes a player. This is a reason why he treats women a certain way. So when you're talking about the truth, you got to look at it from a 365 perspective. You can't just look at it from one way and be like, well, father didn't teach him nothing, or, that's society, or that's rap music, where it's like, no, because everybody's, issue is not those things. Some people's issue is the experiences that they had, and most of them start at when you're a child. Right. So I think that what it goes to more so is protecting the purity and the innocence of a young boy, and then also being able to check the toxic behavior of women and the double standards that exist when women do things that are evil and of predatory nature. And that same level of, activism is not fought at the same time.
I absolutely agree. And when I commented on that post, I said, women have been programmed by patriarchy to be predatory. And I had a couple people like, what do you mean programmed by patriarchy? And what I meant by that is that, our sexuality has been weaponized and used against us for so long, from being enslaved all the way up until now. Women were raped into submission, men were raped into submission. And so we've had this sort of like perverted relationship with sex that has then, just seeped into ourselves, and the programming of that hasn't properly been addressed. So when I say that women have been programmed by patriarchy, because we've been robbed of our innocence for so long, so many centuries, we now might look at somebody younger and be like, it's the innocence. It's the innocence that I think people are after in those situations, because they've had that robbed from them and they want that back. And really what it is, in my opinion, in my own healing journey and just understanding of psychology, is the connection to source. Because when you are a child of God, you have this infinite connection to abundance, love, joy, creativity. But when you're robbed of that at such a young age, that umbilical cord is cut, and you constantly spend your life in confusion, searching for that from other people. And I think that's what's happened in our community, because for so long, like I said, our sexuality and sex has been weaponized and used against us. And that's the source of our creative energy as well. And so if there's shame around that, if there's guilt around that, if there's trauma around it, then we are inherently disconnected from God, the source of all creation. Our umbilical cord is severed. We don't have what we would naturally have access to as people of the Most High? I appreciate you for answering that question. Absolutely. Because that's something that, you know, I'm very passionate about.
From that particular post or tweet, yeah, I got a shadow ban on Instagram for that.
That's interesting. And I think, you know, it's the core of so much of our healing. Like, this particular conversation is the core of so much of our healing, because it is the root chakra. Like, it is the foundation of who we are. And if we continue to live our lives without addressing it, then we'll continue to perpetuate the cycles of hurt that we're stuck in.
We seen the situation with Tiffany Haddish.
That was, I mean, yeah, I think that was the same week that I saw that post. And it was like, it was disgusting. I didn't watch the video because I don't feel that it's necessary for me to expose myself to that type of trauma. But these are the type of like sadistic, ritualistic things that we're dealing with in this society, where kids are literally preyed on. When you prey on a child, when you rob a child of their innocence at such a young age, they become easy to control. Now they have shame. Now they have guilt. Now they have confusion. And all of those lower level emotions makes them so much easier to control, to manipulate, to maneuver, to place your agendas onto. And so until we take back our awareness through accountability, through our own healing, then we, like I said, continue to perpetuate these cycles of hurt.
Yeah, I mean, you got to know you're dealing with devils. You understand me? And devils come in all form, but it's based on their actions.
Absolutely.
You dig? And, you know, nobody wants to call these devils out because oftentimes they're in positions of power, right, in proximity, and they control the money and the checks. So people don't speak that strongly about it because their boss might be a devil. They might be a devil, right? And they don't want that proximity of being a truth speaker. Yeah. You dig? But I think that shit like that, where you got to call it out, you know, by name. Right. You feel me? And I didn't see enough people with influence calling out that kind of behavior. And I think that's the sickening thing about it. You understand me? And I think it's more so because it's normalized. Yes. Right? It's normalized to see it and then shut up. And we know Hollywood comes with them sadistic rituals 100%. You feel me? And they got a bunch of weird-ass people that's in the positions that perpetuate it, and then everybody turn a blind eye. But anytime you're dealing with the innocence of a child and somebody degrades that, they deserve death, in my opinion. Absolutely. There's nothing to talk about this because you got to create a zero-tolerance type reality.
Absolutely.
Dig? And that's the only way we live in a place to where we can say, okay, goodness rule the world.
Absolutely. Do you feel like there's an imbalance or just not a place for men to speak up when it comes to sexual trauma the way that there is for women? Because just in my own experience with healing, I don't want to say that it's a benefit that women get to call themselves victims or identify as victims, but I think being able to identify as a victim gives some context to what has occurred, whereas with the men don't necessarily get that opportunity to identify as victims because they're constantly told that nothing has happened to them and nothing is wrong. So there might not be the same opportunities for healing and understanding.
Yeah, I mean, I think when a man is seen as a victim, it's seen as weak. When a woman is seen as a victim, now it's seen as strength because she's telling her story, right? Oh, you're so strong for telling this. But a man is still, even when people say, yo, you're so strong, but he's still going to be seen as weak because he's connected to this victim reality now. A lot of the stories is not so much of just women doing something to young boys, but men doing, right? And if a man has been sexually sodomized by another man, then not only he does not want to be a victim, he don't even want to be associated with it. Right. Everybody is told, well, just accept yourself as you are. So now you can't go to a psychologist and be like, yo, I think this made me who I am. Mm-hmm. Why? Because society is just telling you to have pride in whatever you are today. Nobody is looking at it from, you know, a childhood trauma experience and saying that this is what made you this way. This is what confused your identity in different ways. Both sides of the spectrum deal with that, the heterosexual community and the homosexual community, right? And neither one have the space to have these conversations, especially when it comes to black men in America, because black men in America are supposed to go through pain but not talk about it. The only statistic where white men beat us, because we number one in disease, we number one in prison, we number one in low education rates, we number one in all of the worst statistics in America. White men beat us in suicide, right?
Interesting.
And